Hello, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar on what's next for the Global Development Agenda, the Nordic Local View. We're now moving closer to the 2030, which is the deadline for the Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, which is still our global shared framework for pushing development forward. But the clock is ticking, time is running, and it's time to ask questions. What kind of progress have we made? What is still left to be done? And how should we shape the agenda past 2030? My name is Miia Itänen. I'm a senior communications advisor here at Nordregio. And together, we will today look at some of these questions from a Nordic perspective. We will look at what has worked, what kind of challenges there still are, and maybe most importantly, how the local ambitions can guide and steer the global agenda forward post 2030. Today's webinar is brought to you by Nordregio, which is a Nordic research institute under the Nordic Council of Ministers. Our work focuses on regional development and issues like sustainability and policy learning across the Nordic region. We connect research to policy and help to support evidence-based decision-making across the Nordic region. And today's webinar is part of our ongoing work on advancing the 2030 agenda and shaping the global post-2030 framework together with Nordic municipalities and regions. We have a lot of speakers lined up for you today. We look forward to interesting discussions. So let's have a look at the agenda and I'll show you what is coming. After this very brief welcome here from the studio, we are going to hear more about our findings, preliminary findings from the study that we are working on. You'll hear from one of our researchers, Berlina, who will tell you more about what we've seen, what is working, what kind of challenges there are, and where we are going next. Then we will reflect on those together with some Nordic municipalities. We've got Frida Jonsson, Suvi, Jäntti, and Helga Bordsdotter Christiansen here today with us. So we will go to Tierp in Sweden, Espoo in Finland, and Tromsø in Norway, and hear some concrete local experiences and good practices. Then we will expand that view together with Nina Weitz from Stockholm Environment Institute and Sebastian Vosel from the Local 2030 Coalition from the United Nations, who will give us a broader global perspective on these issues. And before we close, we will look at some future outlook issues, next steps to be taken, together with Evelina Kiema-Majanen and Anne Romsas from the Nordic associations from municipalities and regions, the association from Finland and the association from Norway. But there's also another important participant in today's discussion, and that is you. You can contribute to the discussions that we'll have. We will run some polls, we will ask some questions, and you can take part in these discussions through the chat. To do that, we have some help. We have some staff helping out with the chat. One of them is here in the studio with us. So Nora, tell us more about how people can participate today.
Yes, hello everyone, also from me. My name is Nora Sanchez-Gassen and I work as a senior research fellow here at Nordregio, and I've been part of the project team. We have interviewed municipalities, we've interviewed regional actors in the Nordic region to hear their views about Agenda 2030, how the work is going, what some of the challenges are and what lies ahead. We are really interested and looking forward to share some of our findings with you, but also, of course, to discuss them with the panelists, what they think, if they recognize themselves in the results and how they see our findings. But of course, you also matter. We really like to hear from you. What do you think? Which questions do you have for our panelists and so on? So please do post them in the chat. I will have a look at the chat throughout the webinar and we will see if we feed some of these questions in our discussion. So you'll be very encouraged to share whatever you have on your mind there.
So make use of this opportunity, take part in the discussion, share your experiences, share your views, and let's shape the discussion on the present and the post-2030 future together. We have a welcome poll running just to get a better sense of who is in this session today and who's participating in the discussion. So we've asked you what type of organization you represent. I'll give you a little bit more time to respond to this poll, but so far it looks like we've got about 30% of the participants from municipalities and regional authorities, which is excellent because those are the types of experiences we want to hear. We also have about 25% of the participants coming from research and academia. So the research perspective is very well represented. And we've got 18% of national administration and agency representatives, as well as people from international organizations, NGOs and civil society, as well as others. In addition to this, I would also like you to let us know in the chat where you are connecting from. We'll hear a lot of Nordic experiences today, but we also know that there's a lot of participants from the Baltics, from the EU, and even beyond. So drop a quick message in the chat and let us know where you are connecting from today. With that, it is time to move to our first speaker of the day, and as said, hear more about the work that we've done and the preliminary findings, what we've heard from Nordic municipalities and regions on how they see the present and the road ahead. I will hand over to Anna Berlina, one of our researchers, who will tell you more. Anna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Miia, for the presentation and introduction. And hello from my side to all the participants, online participants, but also the speakers of today's webinar. I will give you some preliminary findings, some first findings from our study on advancing the 2030 agenda and shaping the next global development agenda. Here are the slides. So just a background, a little bit of background for you today. It is a study that has been implemented by Nordregio in collaboration with the associations of local and regional governments in the Nordic countries. This study is financed by the Nordic Council of Ministers, and we are very much advanced in the implementation phase. We have implemented most of our work, empirical work, and we are going to produce a policy brief based on this study in the beginning of next year. And the aim of the study is to hear the views and perspectives of Nordic local and regional level on how to advance the 2030 agenda, and also to hear the thoughts on how the next development agenda should be shaped. So, and through this, we aim to inspire action. We aim to contribute to the global dialogue on the post-2030 agenda. And in this work, the empirical material is based on focus group discussions to the largest extent, as well as some separate interviews with those local and regional actors in the Nordic countries. And during these dialogues, we asked them many questions, but the key questions were: what has worked well with the 2030 agenda? What are the key challenges in working and in advancing the 2030 agenda? What can be done to accelerate the progress towards the SDGs? And how should the next development agenda look like after 2030? So here you can see a little bit of idea of who the contributors to the study have been. We have we've heard from 24 municipalities in the Nordic countries, 6 associations of local and regional governments, 6 regions. We've heard perspectives from the government of Åland, and within the next couple of weeks, we also have a last focus group with the Nordic youth. And we've aimed to have quite a broad geographical coverage, as you can see on the map to the right, both geographical coverage, but also to have municipalities representing different sizes also. Well, before I go into preliminary findings, I still want to emphasize that it's still work in progress. And as Nora said, as Miia mentioned, we are really grateful if you could contribute with your feedback. And have we missed something? Should something be added to our findings? So you can use the chat and also connect with us after the webinar. So let's look at what has worked well. So we hear from our focus group discussions, from our interviews, that working with the 2030 agenda has contributed to increase understanding of sustainability. So it is now more, sustainability is now understood more than working with the only environmental aspects and recycling, as some of participants have put it, and has made sustainability work more concrete and more meaningful at the local level. It was also found relevant to local work. It aligns well with the municipal tasks and municipal responsibilities in the Nordic countries. And then also it has been a powerful communication engagement tool, particularly when we talk about building links and synergies with connections with the private sector, with civil society, with the different levels of governments. It has also served as kind of a motivational driver of change, motivational driver. it pointed to the right direction, where we should be heading, where we should be going with our work. And it also helped to kind of link the local action to the global action, helping to view like work being done at the local level, contributing to the bigger picture, to the global effort. But despite those positive experiences that municipalities and regions have had with the Agenda 2030, there are still some challenges remaining. And one of the key challenges has been a lack of political prioritization and weak leadership. This has been a kind of a critical challenge that's been emphasized frequently in our discussions. And we've seen that there is a declining interest and support from national and international level. And this is undermining the progress, and it creates a more difficult environment for long-term sustainability work. Then another challenge has been working in silos and kind of sectoral thinking, which makes it challenging to work, to have like this holistic perspective on sustainability. It makes it difficult to find synergies between different goals and also identify conflicts. There have also been some resource and capacity constraints, particularly mentioned by small municipalities. And in this context, good ideas exist, but they struggle to find time and resources to implement them. Then also measuring progress has been a challenge due to lack of kind of insufficient support for monitoring, but also lack of unlimited access to local data. And the knowledge gaps, once again, although I've emphasized before that Agenda 2030 has contributed to increased understanding of sustainability, we still see that knowledge gaps is a challenge. It could be explained by the complex nature of the agenda as such, but also that there is still persistent lack of understanding of holistic sustainability. So we looked at what has worked well, what have been the challenges. We've also asked in our discussions what can be done to accelerate progress, what are the key support needs, what are the priorities. And here we've heard that from some of the discussions that it is important to keep the Agenda 2030 relevant and visible. So as one of the participants of the focus group put it, we should keep the agenda on the agenda. And one important thing is that there should be a strong political backing for our work. And there should be clear direction and guidance from the national level on how to work with agenda, but also to secure mobilization and mobilize resources to drive momentum and encourage local implementation. The communication has also been an important aspect to accelerate progress, and this we should not forget about that effective communication, both within the organization, but also outside the organization with the global audience or the broader public, is crucial. We should not forget that some people outside our circle, outside our network, may think differently, may not be supporting sustainable development, or may be opposing to that. And we need to find a way how to engage with them, how to communicate with them that resonates with them and without causing opposition or triggering opposition. And then finally, but one other point is that we need to be better integrating the SDGs into existing steering and management tools that the municipalities are using. We shouldn't reinvent the tools. We should keep the ones we're already using in order not to put additional administrative pressure on municipalities and regions. Then we also have had some discussions on how to move beyond GDP and economic growth in measuring development and progress. And here we also discussed that we should rethink the way we measure progress to also measure well-being, to be better in measuring thriving communities and resilience. Then engaging citizens and the private sector is also very important for sustainability, having mobilized citizens, not only having the top-down approach, and local democracy. In order to accelerate progress, we need local democracy, and it's important for fostering sustainability as having empowered citizens and also those and having those who trust in our system and our political system in our institutions, it is an important foundation for long-term work with sustainable development. One more thing here is that we discussed also the need to identify and be better in understanding the synergies between the goals, but also the conflicts, the possible trade-offs to maximize their impact. And finally, I have just a few minutes left, and I would like to share some discussion points that emerge in our study on post-2030. What should be the next development agenda? How should it be shaped? What should be the priority areas? And I can mention that it has been unanimous agreement that we should keep the current agenda. It is still important, it is still relevant, it is still good to build on this one in order to revise and update the next one. One important strength of the current agenda has been this holistic perspective. It's systems approach or systemic thinking behind it. And this is something that we should absolutely keep and preserve. But there were some views saying that we should maybe to consider simplifying the next agenda or making it less complex, for instance, by making the sub-goals, reducing the number of sub-goals. And we should be better. The future agenda should focus more on implementation and be more action-oriented, and also should have clear guidance and tools on how to actually create the change. And of course, the follow-up and accountability, it is also very important for creating real impact. We've also discussed that there should be stronger acknowledgement of the role of cities and local level in the future agenda, both in the shaping the agenda, but also in the implementation phase. And there were also a few topics, some themes, some policy themes that our participants, our contributors to the study thought that should be more emphasized in the post-2030. And these topics are circular economy and overconsumption, well-being, equity, and planetary health, also human rights and local democracy, and innovation as such. Innovation and experimentation, it should be more of a cross-cutting perspective across the goals. And I know that there's been a lot of information, a lot to take in, so I would like to conclude with just a few takeaways. We see in our work, in our interviews, in our focus group discussions, that there has been a declining interest and support from national and international level to the 2030 agenda. There have been competing priorities and complex geopolitical situation, which create like a growing challenges for local implementation of the agenda. But still, for those municipalities where SDGs have been embedded in their governance structures and their planning systems, they still see clear benefits and added value in using the Agenda 2030 as a tool in their work. And the key message for post-2030 is keep the agenda, the current agenda, but modify, reprioritize, and enhance accountability mechanisms, and also foster more action-oriented implementation and support implementation, of course. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. I think that gives a very good overview. Thanks a lot for the presentation. You said that there is an agreement in keeping the agenda in some shape or form or building on it. But what about the rest of the wishes? There were quite a few points mentioned, ideas coming across. Was it all very aligned, or do we have different views among the regions and municipalities?
I think in general, the views have been aligned, but there were some differing ideas or perspectives about accountability and enforcement mechanisms. So some municipalities would like to have stronger enforcement to foster accountability, while others say, no, we don't need that. We are overwhelmed with our tasks, and we don't need stronger enforcement mechanisms. But these were just different perspectives can reflect on right now.
Yeah, and different perspectives is also what we are seeing in the chat. It's nice to see people very active. We've had a lot of messages already, some comments coming in. We will come back to your comments a little bit later on. We'll feed them into the panels as we continue with the discussion. Anna will also be with us in the chat. You will see her there. We've got some of our other colleagues there, so please keep the comments coming, and we'll take the discussion now to the chat, and then we'll see Anna a little bit later today as we wrap up. So this gives you an idea of what we've heard from the regions and municipalities so far. Now, the next question is, as you already saw in the chat, how does this all sound to you? Do you recognize some of these in your area, in your own context? Have you seen something completely different? We'd be very interested in hearing that. So there is a little poll where you can give us some input, and please do share some concrete examples also in the chat. Now we will add some of these examples from the Nordic perspective, because we will move over to our first panel, which will be a trip across Sweden, Norway, and Finland. We're going to go to Tierp in Sweden, Espoo in Finland, and Tromsø in Norway, where we will meet Frida Jonsson, Suvi Jäntti, and Helga Bårdsdotter Christiansen, who are all sustainability specialists in the municipalities and regions. So we will bring in the panel, and then we will continue to discuss what Anna just outlined. So we are going to hear how some of this reflects in the local context, or how things work, what has worked, what has maybe not worked so well. Welcome to all three of you. And as said, keep the questions coming, because we are going to go over to Nora and see what we might bring into the discussion as we move forward. But now, just to kick things off, I would like to get some quick comments from all of you on how these reflect your local reality. How are you working with the sustainable development, and what does it look like in your area? If we start with you, Frida, and go to Tierp in Sweden, how are things there?
So I would just like to start with thank you for inviting me, and thank you for highlighting these important questions in the study. In Tierp, we have actually for a long time now discussed, what happens after 2030. We have ongoing plans, master plans, and strategies, which is based on the 2030 agenda that reaches well beyond 2030, and we need preparation, what will come afterwards. So I hope really the local level can be a part of the future and the development of the SDGs, not only the national governments. And I think this discussion and this study is a good start. And so for the study, there are so many things that we recognize and can relate to, and I will highlight some of them that we work with, which I see as the most important one. So first of all, as many have mentioned, the SDGs for us has given us a language to communicate around sustainability. So when I started working in Tierp, we had our own sustainability goals, a sustainability policy that no one really knew or really remembered. And now we have these goals, these colorful goals that people really recognize. And the private sector, the civil society, the use is the same. And even the children in the schools, they also learn about the SDGs. So I would say it's not that fuzzy anymore. It's more concrete. It's about gender equality, about the lakes and forests, and reducing poverty, enhancing education. So the SDGs has given us, I would say, a framework to talk about and highlight where we are sustainable and where we aren't. And in Tierp, we have our own local SDG targets in our budget. So the 2030 agenda is really, I would say, the foundation of our steering model. They are the only goals that we have, and all the sectors and employees are working with them. So localizing the goals, making them your own, I think that is crucial. And secondly, I also want to highlight these underlying principles of the 2030 agenda. A lot of municipalities also lifted this holistic view. I think it's super important. There you can find, the interesting bits, the synergies, the goal conflicts. And when me and my colleagues are given a new project, we're working now on building a new school, for example, or have a project with new tariffs in elderly care. And when we work with that, we need to take all the perspectives in there. So the consequences for each SDG in a sustainability analysis. And it gives us, I would say it gives us more quality in our work, more long-term decisions. So it's more challenging because we need to work with together with different sectors, but it also makes us better. And I just want to also conclude that we see also a positive trend locally. I mean, we are far from finished. We see a lot of goal conflicts. We don't know really how to handle, but in Tierp, we see a positive development in most of the SDGs locally. So we are taking small steps, all the time, improving school results, becoming more gender equal, lowering emissions, and so on. It goes slowly. It goes too slow for us to achieve the goals by 2030, but we are making progress. And I'm sure there's so many good examples locally that I hear about all the time, and I'm sure all the municipalities in the Nordic countries have them and sees them. But it's also important to highlight the local examples and all the good things that actually are happening, all the time, as a counterweight to everything that's happened globally that is not so positive. So we see a lot of recognition, but both challenges and benefits with the agenda. Yeah.
So the work definitely continues. But thank you. You're definitely taking steps in the right direction, as you said.
Yes.
They may be small, but moving ahead
all the time.
Perfect. I think we'll come back to this because I think it sounds like you do have a lot of experiences to share and a lot of things that others can learn from. But just to continue and hear a little bit more from the Norwegian perspective, Helga, can you tell us a little bit about how Tromsø is approaching these issues? And does this all sound familiar to you as well?
Yeah, we recognize ourselves in the findings that Nordregio have developed now, and also what Frida is pointing out. I would say that like all of our sort of steering documents, like the plans that the municipality is running by, is based on the SDG goals, and as also pointed out, that gives us the common sort of way forward. And it has been very important. And there has also been some like national laws and regulations to make sure that we as municipalities follow this up. Like as an example, to integrate the environmental perspective when we buy stuff as a municipality, when we build a school or when we buy materials. So that is now bound by law and should be weighted minimum like 30%. So that is the way that it sort of works really good. I guess we're coming back to sort of the challenges later on, but I would say that the biggest challenge is that the word sustainability is sort of being hollowed out, and that we are maybe forcing too often to put sustainability into every context without becoming like to the point on it. But I think what Frida says sort of measures this up. I think it's very important to keep the route going, to use the SDGs and not to sort of take away the goals that we now have used some time learning what really means and how to put them into action and how to work towards them. There's a long way to go to make this even better.
So definitely more work to do, but it's nice to hear that you also have found a common approach. And I think it's also interesting, this hollowing out idea of, are we maybe then going too far, trying to apply it to everything? What should be prioritized? How do we find that common direction? Before we go more into the challenges, and I still want to hear more about your examples and what exactly you're doing on the ground. Suvi, let's turn over to Espoo and the Finnish view. Is this also what you are doing, or is there something specific to highlight from Espoo's experiences?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Maybe now it's better.
Yes.
Sorry. So yeah, definitely a lot of what colleagues from Norway and Sweden are telling is resonating also what we do in Espoo. I wanted to highlight maybe a couple of things that we especially recently have been doing in our SDG journey, so to say. We have used the Agenda 2030 for quite a long time in the city as part of our international cooperation, for example. It's a good shared language, as Frida was mentioning. So we are quite quickly on the same page with international colleagues when we talk about sustainability, when we talk about SDGs, for example. And also on a local level, it serves very well to, in a communication, for example, telling what the municipality is doing for sustainability. So we SDGs for that. But we want to use SDGs as a tool, not only for monitoring. Espoo has done now 3 voluntary local reviews. So that's obviously taking a look at the to the past, like, okay, we did something, how did it go in terms of the 17 goals and sustainability, which is the first crucial step in sustainability, obviously, to know where we are at. But after that, we want to move into the use in the SDGs, because the agenda is an action plan. Actually, it tells us what to do in order to achieve sustainability. And of course, as it was mentioned, they need to be localized. It doesn't translate automatically to the local level. But then when we localize them, we can use them actually for planning for our future work, and then it goes into implementation. And as big part of that, we use them for capacity building, for example, of our city employees, in a sense that we want everybody to understand that how they can promote sustainability in practice via their work, whether they work in a school, daycare, infrastructure, and understanding what are the impacts, because the sustainability needs to be promoted holistically. Obviously, you cannot promote something at the cost of another, because then it's not a holistic way, and it doesn't. It's not sustainable. So our approach, this is my second point for this comment, is that especially recently, as part of an URBAC project called Cities for Sustainability Governance, it's a European city network, we have been focusing on how we can integrate SDGs and sustainability into our steering structures. For example, our strategy or the steering documents that guide or steer our work in a city, but also really importantly to the organizational culture, because you all might know the famous saying that the culture eats strategy as breakfast. So it needs to be simultaneously in the both, and in the interplay of those both steering structure and organizational culture, we get them into the implementation. And we don't want to create the idea of enforce the idea that everybody would think that sustainability is something extra, is an extra task for my work. I'm already so busy. The sustainability team can take care of it. We want everybody to understand how to promote them via their work. So that's how they go to practice, to implementation.
Sounds very good. So you're really putting the plan into action as well, and found some good tools to do that. Digging a little bit deeper into this, still going with your experiences, we've heard about challenges and also about the positive steps that you're all taking, but what is maybe something that has been very effective, something that could inspire some of the other participants today? As you've seen, we have participants not only from the Nordics, but even a very global audience. So is there something that they could learn from you, or maybe take away? Suvi, if we continue with you, you mentioned that you've done the local VSRs. Is there maybe something else that has been very inspiring or could be highlighted from Espoo?
Well, one really practical example comes to my mind, because I think it's why sustainability is not implemented like that actively or optimally in a local level is due to the fact that we don't have the understanding or capacity to understand the holistic nature of sustainability. So obviously, we as a city, everybody do work with very good intentions. So when there comes negative impacts, they are usually unintended impacts also, because we haven't been able to understand that our work might create negative impacts. So, and many times they can be really indirect impacts as well. And the SDGs can help us bridge our impacts also from the local level up until the global level, and understand, for example, our consumption, how it relates to global level impacts. But the practice, I think, which has been very, I don't know, at least we have seen it has worked, is in the capacity building of our personnel. So we use SDG analysis tool for that. We have a canvas, a workshop concept, where we try to empower the people who work for the city in any kind of position to be empowered to promote more sustainability through their work. And that usually starts from because as we all know, promoting sustainability, you might encounter resistance as well, like in every change that you would like to implement. So I think one that has helped us in that resistance is that people understand first that, okay, they are actually already promoting sustainability, and they get inspired, they get empowered when they do the linkages of like how their work relate to sustainability with the help of SDGs. And then we dig deeper, like, okay, then let's take a look about the negative impacts, because we need to understand them in order to avoid them and minimize them. So yeah, that comes to my mind, that we have been quite happy in our capacity building and raising awareness about the SDGs.
Yeah, that sounds very good. So building those capacities locally and helping people to understand how it really relates to their work and finding those concrete ways to work forward with it. What about Helga? How is it in Tromsø? Is there another inspiring practice that we could all maybe use or consider?
Yeah, I think what is like important to remember, like we are talking about time now in the world where money is limited. And I think what has been a very good system from the government in Norway is to have good incentives to work with sustainability. There has been good possibilities for fundings of projects. But that problem leads to the fact that only municipalities that has a capacity to run project-based systems can do so. So those with limited personnel, for example, don't have the time and effort to actually apply for funding and to start a project and to report on the funding. So I will come a bit more back to it later. But one of the things that has really worked for us is to maybe calm down the sustainability talk a bit. Like, since all our plans are based on sustainability, they're all there. They're the backbone of how the municipality work. But to very often think as the sustainability goals, a municipality cannot choose. And they have to deliver on all of the sustainability goals. They're all their responsibility. So we are also trying to shift the narrative a little bit and talk more about responsibility and risk assessment, because that's what it is. Very often sustainability is like this, pink fluffy cloud that you can do with the left hand when you have time, when you have more money, when there is capacity, and shifting the narrative to responsibility and risk sort of pushes the agenda that this should happen now, and maybe now when the money is more limited and there is fewer people to do more tasks. This is now super important to work with sustainability, so there's less cleanup later. But to have that understanding for all generations working together, we are also now talking much more about responsibility and risk.
That's also interesting, and I suppose it also helps tease out really the real priorities, what is feasible, what is possible, and also what is urgent. So this is also interesting. We'll take a note of that. So responsibilities and risks, and I'll continue with Frida and Tierp. Is there some sort of inspiration that we could still draw from your perspective?
I think yes, there are, and I will just start by agreeing with all the things that have been said. I agree on all of them. For us, this localization of the goals, making them our own, has been crucial. So we have around 70 local targets at the moment. That's very concrete and understandable. Shows what we need to focus on locally. Has been important, and also, if possible, put them in the core of your steering model. The other one said that too. So it becomes part of the everyday work, really, not a perspective that comes in from the side. So if possible, work with your budget, your master plans, your annual reports. And we also, as Suvi said, in Espoo, we do this sustainability analysis prior to political decision. And that has also been a game changer for us, and a great way to make sure that all the perspectives are included, but also show the synergies and goal conflicts that exist. And we have also a tool for that can easily be shared. And we are also working more and more with democracy and strengthening democracy. This is maybe a harder one, but we are also affected. You said that too, that by the polarization, that this debate globally, naturally, we see it in Tierp also, a lot of criticism of the concept of sustainability. But when we really go out and ask citizens what they prefer, what they want, I mean, they want the good schools, they want the clean lakes, where they can swim or fish. They value their local forest or the local community. So there's less conflict there. So if we can find ways of making citizens more involved in decision making, also children, youth involved, we can quiet some of that criticism and take, I would say, better decisions. But for me, it's all about development. No one should be against it. So we can work with citizens dialogue, citizen initiatives, youth panels. We work with referendums also in Tierp. That can be a key of reaching a more sustainable development locally.
Excellent. Thank you all for the perspectives. I want to turn towards the 2030 and even post 2030 in a little bit. So I will come back to you, but we've already heard a lot of things, taking small steps, building sustainability into your processes, but also doing risk assessments, thinking about responsibilities, making sure that you build up democracy and engagement and involvement at the local level, doing capacity building and such. I also see that the chat is very, very active and people are sharing a lot of their inputs there. And also when we asked the participants about how they see these findings, many of them saw that it is very well aligned with their experiences, but there were also some differences. And knowing that a lot of those have also been shared in the chat, I just want to turn quickly to Nora to get a quick update on how the chat has been looking and if we maybe have some questions to feed into the discussion as we continue.
Yes, thank you all for being very active on the chat and also sharing what you are doing. I think it's very enlightening and interesting to see what perspectives you have to share. I want to take up one question from Marie and bring it into the discussion. She comments, and we've heard this a lot also in our focus group discussion, she comments on the disappearance of support and interest from the national level. And Marie says that in her case, or in her perception, that may also raise questions at the local level. Should we continue with this? If there's no support anymore coming from the national level, should we still do this? It sounds to me a little bit like you have it all well integrated in your systems and you're just doing what you're doing, but maybe you can comment on this. How do you see the relevance of national level support and guidance in this process? And what do you do if that is declining? There's another question by Alina, and I don't know if we have time here, but there was a question. We don't have Denmark represented here in the panel. And if we could say a few words on Denmark, so if there's time for that, maybe we could also from the team say a few words on our findings for Denmark.
We can bring in Denmark towards the end. Let's continue with our panelists just a little bit longer because I actually also wanted to go into the kind of support and frameworks needed. So I think the question feeds in very well into the discussion. So maybe let's take up that question first. How do you work with this locally? And now I'm just looking around as to who might want to go first. Suvi, do you maybe have an experience from Espoo or thoughts?
Well, I was just thinking of the question of the national level support and for the local level, how important it is for the cities. And luckily we here in Finland still, I feel, have the national level support. I just recently was, because we had our voluntary national review published this year as well, and I think it was there where it was very nicely set. I'm just referring, not cannot remember word by word, but in a times of crisis that we see globally with wars and also the ecological crisis, it's actually particularly or especially the moment when we shouldn't lose sight of the Agenda 2030 and the SDGs and sustainability. That's exactly the time when we need them. It's also, as I think Helga was mentioning, that sustainability is not something nice extra that you just do when you have resources and the times are good, but actually in order for us to be able to have good times, we should promote sustainability, and with sustainability we will get the good times. We will get the world as a better place. So, but yeah, in Finland we have quite a good situation with the national level support.
And do we have some reflections on national level support and frameworks? Frida, maybe from Sweden?
Yes, I would simply answer the same. Of course, we have to continue. For us, it's really relevant for us. It's our own goals, it's our own development that is at stake. So I see we have no other choice. But of course, as Suvi said, it's harder if you don't have national support. We see that in Sweden also. We need guidance with the goal conflicts. We are lacking funding. We see that there are laws that needs to be adjusted for us to be successful. But I see I have no other options than continue. We had, as I said before, we had in Tierp our own sustainable goals before, the Agenda 2030. It wasn't easier then. It has really helped us giving this framework and also this language to speak about. So I see that we have no really options, no better options at least, others than to go on and continue to show all the positive results that we see locally, that we benefit from working with the goals. Yeah, that would be my answer.
Yeah, so very well aligned in that sense as well.
Mm-hmm.
And Helga, is it the same in Norway, or how are you working across levels in this sense?
Yeah, I would say it's quite similar. And I think that is the importance now of using the sustainability goals as a way of prioritizing forward what kind of communities we want. And I also see in the chat here, when we talk about lack of funding, human rights, and to understanding the responsibility we have. And again, that will bring me back to the funding system. Because when we see that we have funded, let's just take an example, reuse of furnitures. Let's say we funded a couple of municipalities for a couple of years of doing that. And then some municipalities did not pay attention. And it was just basically figure out a couple of years too late. And then the funding system, no, we stopped funding that because the major cities already done it. And especially the northern region in Norway sort of falls behind. It has other structures to deal with. It has much more demographic challenges that the rest of the world is also seeing now, especially the Western world. We have had that for such a long time in northern Norway, northern Sweden, northern Finland. The infrastructure is little, so we have dealt with these issues for a long time. And I think the funding is there, but it's how do we manage to work with progress when everything has to be project-based. It should have been a system where we see that, well, reuse of furniture is a good idea. Let's key these fundings for that exact reason so that it's done across section. And that's one of the things that I feel is really lacking, is the cooperation between the government section and the municipality section and the county section to also differentiate between the roles that they have. It takes a lot of effort for small municipalities to reach these goals and to start these projects. So that is my biggest sort of red flag a bit, that we are having the bigger cities that has capacity. They are making these great leaps towards the future, and then you have some rich municipalities that are small that can do the same, and then the rest is sort of falling behind. And I think the responsibility, us municipalities that has done good stuff and has done leaps, that we have to take the other municipalities with us. So I'm sort of seeing there's a lot of things being done nationwide, which is not being good enough shared with the municipalities. So we are ending up sitting on sort of reinventing the wheel, each and every one of us. And I can also see in the chat it's the same, because we are sharing all now these really good tools. I would have loved to have some of these tools a couple of years ago, or even knowing that they were in development. So I think we are all trying to create something for the better, and then we are creating it not too much together. But when we try to cooperate, we are too many and we can't get things done. And I think that's maybe one of our bigger challenges.
So there definitely are still challenges to address as well. And it's good that you highlighted the differences between different types of municipalities also, and the different resources. The continuity with funding is definitely also important. I think now that we've heard kind of cross-Nordic perspective, we'll take more of the Danish experiences in the chat. So please share those there, as well as other examples. I would like to wrap up this part and encourage you all to share more in the chat. But now a quick final round. If and when we look towards the 2030 and beyond, what are the things that you want to see there? If you get to make a wish for the future from your perspective, what is it that we really need to take with us as we continue the work? And please keep it rather short. Frida, do we have some future wishes from Tierp?
Yes, so what we wish for is not like a new agenda rather than a revised one. It has taken some time for at least us or the citizens here to learn and recognize the goals, and it has been very useful for us. I hope to keep that. And I discussed with my colleagues before the seminars what we missed, and there were some things that came up. We discussed this, the connection to democracy and human rights, especially children's rights that we're working a lot with in Sweden. It could be more stated more clearly in several of the goals, but I also understand that why it's not mentioned also. So it can also be important to get as many countries on board as possible, but we misses that, and I see democracy as a key. We also discussed this perspective of justice that also can be strengthened between the smaller and larger communities, municipalities, but also on a global level. And we did this. We did a voluntary local review last year, and we realized there that we were very good at measuring our own progress locally in Tierp, but not so good in judging our impact globally in this VLR. I mean, the climate, ecological footprint, self-sufficiency. I mean, there's so many other things that we can have lifted. It could be through indicators, through sub-goals, and it would be possible. It would, I think in the agenda, it could be even highly stated, this injustice in the impact on other countries' opportunities to achieve their goals. But I like that the agenda has now a focus on all countries and not only the developing countries as it was before. But this injustice could be highly more clearly stated in the agenda. But we hope to keep it as it is with not too many changes, because we have just started, the development, and we have a far way to go to reach the goals.
Great. So let's keep it, let's build on it, let's take some of these successes and make sure that we don't lose the progress made. Excellent. Yeah. Helga from Tromsø, what is on your wish list for the future?
My wish list for the future is local governance, because we're so good at talking about our financial, how we're doing financially. But I would like to see a joint system that helps us to govern towards sustainability within the municipalities, and that is not based on some people really feeling the urge to make a change, but that it's prioritized in the municipality, and that the system is there for them and that they don't have to reinvent themselves. I echo Frida on keep it, because we have just learned it.
Excellent. I like to end on such a point that is having a clear message. Keep it, build on it. Suvi, do you agree, or would Espoo like to propose something different?
Yes, I actually highly agree on keeping it. Some updated version might be a good idea to see, take a look at some of the goals more closely. For example, I don't like enforcing, for example, the fact that overconsumption in the Western countries especially is the root cause for ecological crisis. So I think that's something that we should highlight more in the agenda. But I like the fact that it's actionable. As I mentioned, it tells, the SDGs tells us what to basically do in order to get this world a better place, more sustainable. And then when we localize it, then we realize what we should do as municipality as well. So I like that fact. And what maybe in my wish list would be for more is that some more attention to highlighting also the interrelatedness of the SDGs in order to recognize what are the biggest trade-offs, how to avoid them, and of course reinforcing the positive synergies as well. And this is, in essence, is systems thinking. So, but maybe we need to put some more focus on that, because we see that we are still doing development work at the cost of environment. So we need to understand the big picture better. So I think those are my wish lists for the post 2030.
Great. Thank you all. We've got some good points for the future, and we will put these in our bag and take them to the next panel where we start to broaden the perspective and see how the Nordic view matches with some of the global developments and research views. At this point, I want to thank you all, Frida, Helga, and Suvi, for your contributions. They will also be available in the chat. So if you want to continue the discussion, please feel free to do so in the chat. I will now invite the next panelists to join me here. We have Nina Weitz from the Stockholm Environment Institute and Sebastian Rosell from the Local 2030 Coalition of the United Nations. So we've started with a Nordic perspective, looked at some of the experiences and wishes from the municipalities and regions, but now I would like to put this in a bigger context and bigger picture. How does this reflect some of the other developments and discussions that we're seeing? Let's kick things off. We're going to bring in some additional comments from the chat, which I see is still very active. So thank you for being active and sharing your thoughts also on that side. But Nina, going first to you, we've heard from the practical experiences, but you've looked at it also from the research perspective and worked with a lot of these issues in your work. Have you seen similar things, or is there something that we might have overlooked so far?
Yes, thank you so much. And let me first say that it's been a super inspiring panel just before us. So thanks a lot for sharing these local perspectives very openly. And I'd say that many of the lessons learned that we observed globally in the global research that we draw on, they resonate very strongly with what we've heard here from the Nordic experience, and the points that were also highlighted in your report. So I'll try to pick up on a couple of them. And I think my first reflection would be on this point that yes, the SDGs have changed how sustainability is communicated and talked about. But they haven't changed to a great extent how we act. And they're a key challenge really for the next agenda is working out how it can really more effectively drive change. So I think both the Nordic experience and the scientific assessments, they highlight really that the SDGs, they have been quite effective tools for communication, providing this shared language, but the impact has been primarily discursive. So the impact on institutions, policy, behavior has been much less. And there is broad agreement, I would say, in the scientific community that the SDGs haven't worked as well as intended in driving change, and therefore haven't led to the desired environmental and social outcomes, even though we're hearing, of course, of good examples and that they are making a difference in some ways. But it's clear if we're looking at that, global picture, the progress reports, both from the UN and independent assessments, it's clear that member states are underachieving in terms of progress on the SDGs. So this gap between aspiration on how the agenda can actually drive change versus aspiration in the framework and the goals, I think is now leading researchers to also suggest that the proposals that will be put forward really are analyzed and assessed based on their potential to really strengthen implementation. So it's really that focus on implementation. So that's one. I think the second one is a very encouraging finding in the report that the agenda has helped to embed sustainability thinking into local governance and in strategic plans and so on, which we already also heard from our colleagues here. And I think this is especially encouraging if we're thinking about how these agendas can sort of in the long term also make that change. So quite a lot of the SDG research and what I've also focused on has been on this, the integrated potential. We've also heard about that and sort of the holistic ambition or approach. And while it's challenging to turn that into practice, I think this ambition and also the research that is coming out as a result on tools, for example, for understanding interlinkages between the different goals, and more systems analysis tools that link to the SDGs. I think they are helping to make more actors think systemically. And if this is a shift that the SDGs and the 2030 agenda really is bringing, I think that's a big achievement for this agenda, and something that also sort of equips us to do better after 2030. So I think that's very, very positive.
Yeah, so having already made good progress in building, let's say, sort of a baseline, common understanding, highlighting some of the key issues, but still time to move from ambitions to actions, let's say. Excellent. I will pause there for a while because I'm very keen to hear how the UN perspective looks at this. Sebastian, you work at the local 2030 coalition and you have a very broad picture into some of these developments. I would be very keen to hear, A, whether this is in line with what you've seen, and B, what else do you see on the list as we continue this work?
Thank you very much, and thanks to Nordregio and to Kuntalito for the invitation to participate. It's really enlightening. I was hearing from the beginning, and it's really inspirational to see the Nordic experience. We know that Nordic countries are big champions when it comes to sustainability and sustainable development goals. And we at the Local 2030 Coalition, the UN-wide platform for localization of the SDGs, we are always looking at inspiration from Nordic countries on this, and this also is underpinning the partnerships that UN Habitat as our co-chair has with Finland as also a localization champion. So indeed, I share the perspective, especially of the success and the achievements of the Nordic countries in this. Also the shortcomings that are presented in the report, in the study, that is more like globally, but acknowledging that now in an increasingly connected world and facing systemic crises that do not know borders and that need to be thought through regionally and globally, we cannot be only happy about the achievement of one country, of some regions, but we really need to see the global achievements. And indeed, there are some setbacks in terms of SDG achievements. We have only 80% of SDGs on track. And although they have indeed put, they represent, I think, for the first time ever, because we never had a universal agenda that is shared by all countries at planetary level before. So it's already something to have a common compass, but still it enables us to see where the gaps are, and some gaps are indeed remaining depending on where. I think that in this sense, localization is definitely a response, because one of the big limitations that I see in terms of achievements in SDGs, and this, I think the study is reflecting it. I saw the highlights before coming to the webinar. It's the need to have a systemic approach to SDGs, to respond to systemic crises, but also to be able to advance different SDGs at the same time. It's not so much about just focusing on achievements on localization, on education, on health, on energy transition, but rather how do we enable this systemic change and this systemic transformation, using again the SDGs as a compass to make sure that we take into account the different parts of the systems, the different players, etc., but really advancing a systemic transformation rather than fragmented project or siloed sectorial policies. And this is what localization is about, is how do we, from the bottom up, we integrate with the leadership of cities and regions, but also with many other players that can come in, such as civil society organizations, private sector, academia, that can come in from the ground up. We really enable this systemic change that the SDGs are talking about. So in a nutshell, to respond to your question, I think that indeed there are great achievements that we can build on for 2030 in the last sprint, but also beyond. But there are shortcomings also globally and in different regions, in specific contexts, that can only be overcome if localization is put at the center as this enabler for systemic change.
And if we continue to build on that, what is it then that we need to do if we look towards the 2030 or again beyond? How do we address some of these knowledge gaps? And how do we make sure that the local aspect is present? Sebastian, if we continue with you, what are your priorities and how do you see the road ahead?
So yes, I just wanted to stress before coming to post 2030 that 2030 it's too short a cycle. It's just an electoral cycle. We cannot aspire to transformation, deep transformation that is needed for the SDGs in just 5 years. But still, whatever we achieve before 2030 will be the ground where we will build the post 2030. So it's critical to keep in mind 2030 as a deadline. The other thing is that for some countries and from some regions also, including in the Nordic region, with sea level rise, with the acceleration of climate hazards, with also socioeconomic crises that are really affecting lives and democracy beyond the lives, because it's interconnected, 2030 still can be a death sentence. And so we need to keep on accelerating towards this short term while preparing the longer term that is enabling transformation. So with this caveat, I would say that for the post-2030 and for the remaining of the 2030, first, critical is local ownership and leadership. I think that we have, and it has been said in the panel, it's stated in the study, we have limited understanding and ownership on what the sustainable development goals are, why they are responding to everybody's human rights, why they are lowering barriers for some of the vulnerable groups that sometimes rejects them as something global, as something far from their immediate needs. But to the contrary, this is the only way to respond to these needs in a sustainable manner, transforming the systems to enable everybody to enjoy their human rights, to say it in some way. So this local understanding and ownership from population, from local leaders, etc. Then the second will be, as I was saying, like this systemic approach, the coherence, policy coherence across the board and across different levels of governments, and addressing also decision-making gaps through this systemic approach to really have the full picture and not only a siloed approach of sectorial policies, say. Then another one, very important and also pointed out in the report, is the finance gaps. We really need to ensure that budgets are aligned with priorities for sustainable development. It starts at local level, but it's also national budgets, and it's also not only public budget, but also private investment, and public-private collaboration in this sense is very important. You know, while in many public spheres we see that the agenda is now questioned because we have less interest from citizens. It's not always, but in some spheres, private sector many a time come to us to the contrary to say it's a top priority for us. You know, it's a game changer for our private sector need to thrive, you know, in a changing landscape. So public-private collaboration will be key for sure to make sure that investments are flowing in the same direction as public budget and investments. And then I would stress, just to end here, because I could talk for a while, data and knowledge gaps. That are critical, you know, disaggregated data, having these dashboards that are multi-level and that enable dialogue amongst multiple stakeholders and level of the governance on, are we going in the right direction? Are we going at the right speed? Is everybody doing what he or she or it is supposed to do, you know, in terms of institutional and personal commitment? So this is a critical informed decision-making based on data and knowledge that includes the local level and that respect also different local cultures and contexts.
So having good data and having evidence to base your decisions on it, I think that links very well back to some of the issues that you, Nina, pointed out in the beginning. And Sebastian, you were also talking about the systemic approach, as were you, Nina, and then of course the financing. If we really want to go from ambitions to action, then we need to make sure that we've got the resources and tools to do it. But Nina, if we turn back to you, what do you have some pointers maybe on how to work towards the 2030 first and then beyond that? How do we fill some of these knowledge gaps, or what are the things that we should prioritize or speed up on and then build on?
Yes, thanks. So I think, and also adding to what Sebastian has already said, I mean, there are certainly knowledge gaps for sure that needs to be filled. There are plenty of data gaps, which makes it difficult in many countries to monitor progress and to learn what is working and not. But I think if we're looking at that, again, zooming out to the sort of bigger picture, we have so much more knowledge now. We have an evidence base that has grown considerably during the SDG period. And I think, much of it, for me, is really like turning that into solutions and making it work at the local level. So it's really, I think it's more bringing that into, we need very context specific analysis to understand what the barriers are. I think overall there is a good understanding of what needs to change, right? But the barriers are there, and we need to explore in very much detail with different actors at the local level how we can navigate and work around them. And I think to be able to close that gap, we need to work much closer between research and policy to really understand, what are the specifics that we need to work on. But again, zooming out, I think it's questions on means of implementation that we should focus on for the post-2030 agenda, which is again in the how. I agree on working out alternative measures of progress and linking up to processes where there is some momentum now. So, for example, on beyond GDP, and I think on accountability as well, where there is mandate for HLPF reform, for example. So there are like linking up that body of knowledge there is with the local and also with the global processes. And yeah, I can go on as well, but I think these are some. The UN will also be overwhelmed, I think, in the next. It's quite a short time frame now to bring in concrete proposal if we're talking about the next agenda as such. And they will most likely be overwhelmed with proposals just as last time. So we need to also, from a science perspective, I think we have an important role there to also support in terms of how these proposals can be assessed and making sure that they are science-based.
That's an excellent point. Thank you for raising that. And it's true, when there is so much work going on, discussions, ongoing work, look towards the future and all that, it is also, yes, we do need to collaborate. We need to build on what we've already achieved, but also I think we need to have some clear priorities or ideas on what to build on. Time is running and we will soon move on from this panel, but I just want to share quickly that the chat has still been very active. Nora is there, Rebecca is there, and Anna, who you met earlier, is also in the chat, so keep the discussion going. We were also asking some of the participants on what they see as effective approaches for advancing sustainability locally. And a lot of the things that have already been mentioned do resonate with the audience today. We see that we need more partnerships, we need better aligned budgets and strategies, we need to involve the citizens and invest more in capacity building and training and such. And also then to have the post-2030 agenda as more relevant at the local level, we need to make sure that the global agenda is well linked with the local realities. Sometimes that calls for some flexibility when it comes to local priorities. Sometimes there are municipalities who need a bit more support. We also need good coordination mechanisms nationally, but also beyond that. And then we cannot forget about democracy and engagement and involvement. So taking all this into account and looking towards our next discussion, which will be the outlook and a way forward, I would just like you all to highlight some of your key wishes for the future in the chat, and we will come back to those. For now, I want to thank you, Sebastian. I want to thank you, Nina, for your valuable inputs. I think all of this builds a very good grounds for our discussion. And as everyone has said, there would be a lot more to discuss, and I'm sure we will be continuing these discussions not only in the years to come, but also beyond 2030. I still want to gather our thoughts a little bit and see how far we've made it today and where we might be heading from here. So I would like to invite our two final panelists to join me here. We will have Evelina Kiema-Majanen and Anne Romsas from the associations of municipalities and regions from Finland and from Norway. And you don't have an easy task, but we hope that you'll be able to give us some input on where we are and where we are going next. So Evelina, I will just leave the floor to you and see where to start. What should we do? Where should we go? And then Anne, you will jump in and add to that.
Thank you so much, Miia, and thank you, Anne, for joining this last discussion with me. And we actually had a little discussion beforehand and ended up speaking for an hour. And I hope it doesn't last as long today, so we can kind of wrap up all the ideas that we have. But basically, what we discussed was how could we, as local and regional government associations, help the municipalities and help the 2030 agenda to go forward? Because we really see the value in it, don't we, Anne? And,
we certainly do, Evelina.
Yeah. And we were really talking about, our main task really is to take care of our members that are municipalities, right? And we really need to advocate for them. And as much as I can say that I value 2030 agenda, I must say that I value the what is important for the municipalities even more. So this is something, it doesn't have to be a contradiction, but how could we kind of get the municipalities on track in a way that they feel it benefits them most? Or what do you think, Anne?
I think the results from this, from all the interviews and what we heard today, is quite inspiring, because they really rally up when it comes to the SDGs, and they say that it's been valuable for them, and it actually gives some added value. And I think for us as organizations, we just have to keep up the good work, and we have to do more, and we have to keep on utilizing, the tools and the schemes that they already use, and we have to make more of them so that we can help all the municipalities to do the work even better. And one of the things that's been discussed a lot is this work across the sectors, and also the support from the national level. And both Evelina and I, we are really working hard to get the attention and the resources and the coordination mechanisms needed from the national level to support what's going on locally.
Yes, definitely. And I do very much agree with many of the voices today. Nearly everybody said the word holistic here. Yeah. And I believe that this is something we really emphasize as well in our organizations. So the holistic view, but also localizing it. And I really enjoyed, somebody made a very good point about the Arctic SDGs, that you should really consider how to localize in a way that they really make sense on the local level. And the local levels of Nordics, as we saw in our Nordic BSR back in the day. So we could see that there are so many different realities that the municipalities, even in a pretty limited area of the earth, entail. So basically, what we need is more tailoring, more sense-making, and understanding the variety of different kind of municipalities, different kind of realities.
Yeah. I also like this perspective from Sebastian about the system approach. And we've been discussing this a couple of years, but the SDGs really are a holistic framework for systems change if you use it really, really deeply. And I think for the moving ahead for the future, we need to connect the SDGs much stronger with digitalization, with AI, with the potential of innovation. It could be really a big game changer for how we actually do development also across tires. But we have to do it more. We have to communicate it more, and we have to also challenge the national governments more on this perspective, because now it's not a twin transition anymore. It's a siloed transition and development, and it can't go on like that.
Yeah, and one key question here is you both mentioned that we need to take into account the differences between the municipalities and understand that there are different types of regions. Have we reflected that enough in today's discussion? We've heard some examples, we've heard about some of the challenges. Is there a perspective that we have not addressed yet today, something that definitely should also be highlighted?
Well, if I go first, this just came on top of my mind really, is that the people that are here are already, if I can call you guys believers. You believe in the agenda, and you believe that it's a good tool to prepare yourself for the future, as well as deal with the situation that is at hand at the moment. But that said, as we saw before, that this kind of SDG fatigue that I think the municipalities at least really discussed well earlier in this webinar, it is something I believe comes from not understanding the different ways of using the 2030 agenda, the SDGs, because the SDGs are so wide, it's such a wide frame. You can use it for anything you like and still create a more sustainable municipality or world. So basically, what we were talking with Anne was that having this kind of systemic view is a good thing, but then when you have to kind of interpret this to a person who is working on the grassroots level, you have to have a different language. Yes, it's a common language, but then you have different dialects, right, Anne?
We certainly do. And I think the whole part of localizing is just making the SDGs your own and communicating them in a way that's relevant for the inhabitants and for the people working with it, and also the politicians that are hopefully funding the SDG actions. And I think one point that has not been mentioned enough today is the need for collaboration. And when we talk about small municipalities and the lack of resources and lack of capacity, it's what we saw in the Nordic VSR was how much the municipalities actually collaborated in partnerships, in networks, and shared tools and experiences, and also had projects running across the borders of the municipalities, and also with support from the region. So I think we have to tap more into that, and to us as organizations foster more of that type of collaboration that makes it easier to drive these developments locally with the help of your colleagues in other municipalities.
Yeah, definitely.
That's also an excellent point. We have about 10 minutes before closing, and I do want to hear your final thoughts on it, but I want to have a little bit of time to also go back to the chat and take stock of some of the very lively discussion that has been going on that side. So Nora, over to you for a brief comment. How are things looking in the chat, and are there some perspectives that we might have overlooked here in the discussion that come up in that side?
Yes, thank you, Miia. Very interesting chat again. People are sharing tools, things that they've been doing. And it seems to me that a lot of the discussion we're having, at least in part in the chat, really revolves around measuring. How can we track progress, which is very important to get politicians on board, to document what you're doing, to inspire as well. How can we best do that? One set of indicators may be difficult, because then we can't take into account the local diversity, and Evelina, that you mentioned. On the other hand, if everyone has their own measurement, we can't compare. So this seems to be a conundrum. How do we deal with that? It seems to me that that's a key question to take forward into the future, how we deal with that. I want to also take up one quick comment from Shireen. It was only mentioned by Shireen, but it made me think, because we've never talked about this before. And Shireen talks about burnout risks among those who work with sustainability. And I thought that's something that has never come up in any of our interviews or discussions. But maybe it's because people don't want to share. So I thought maybe we have to ask about this a bit more in the future as well. How are you doing? How are you feeling? How is your, in this difficult world where you still try to push on, how are you feeling about the work? What can be done to support you? And sort of, I think here again, networks and collaboration can come in to work together to see that you're not alone doing this. There's other people working on these topics and have found solutions, and you can help each other. So I think a lot of the topics that are coming up in the chat are really connected in that sense, or can be connected. But I take this with me for our own work to ask also a little bit, how are you doing, you people that we talk to? How are you feeling in your work? I thought that was an interesting point.
Very interesting. Can I get quick comments from Evelina or Anna? Because I think this is a very good topic also for the associations. How do you approach these?
Yeah, shall I go first, Evelina?
Yeah,
I think it's a very interesting point, and in the Nordic VSR we made this phrase, the SDG fatigue, but we only kind of focused on the structure and the organization and the politicians and the systems. We didn't really focus on the individual. What does it mean for me? Trying to coordinate, trying to get this big push for the Agenda 2030, and I think it's so important for that. People like us who are already in the family of loving the Agenda 2030, we have to keep advocating, we have to keep communicating, we have to show by example that it is possible. And that is something we are working a lot with in Norway. We have these webinars every month trying to show what local sustainability action actually is and how you do it and what kind of results you actually create by doing it. Because the very thing we cannot lose is hope. And we as the most privileged part of the world, we have to hope and believe that the SDGs are a possibility to reach, and that the next agenda should be even better for both the planet and for people.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. What to say after that? But basically, I wanted to suggest a kind of a medicine for this burnout as well, and that is definitely peer support and peer learning. And people who feel SDGs are important in their life, they are drawn to each other in city organizations and such. But where we come in with Anne and our organizations, we are the bridge builders. We are the messengers, not only to the national and local level, but really between the different experts and the leaders in the organizations, the politicians, the decision makers. And I really feel the peer support is the key. It's the medicine to this. And we actually have, Espoo is one of the cities that belong to the SDG 46 network. And they not only inspire other cities in Finland, in the Nordics, in the world, but also they work with their international partners in Africa, in the UN. Thank you, UN Habitat and Sebastian, for being here today. And thank you for all that. So cooperation, this is the medicine, cooperation and peer support.
Excellent. I will end with you on that because I think you did a great summary with those comments. So thank you so much, Evelina and Anne, for your inputs. I was just thinking about, if we are preaching to the choir, how do we break out of our bubble and how do we deal with the people getting tired, the fatigue and all that. But you highlighted we need to communicate, we need to continue to work. Collaboration is important. We need to invest on peer learning. So all of these are definitely something to take away, not only for the post-2030, but right now, after this webinar, something that we definitely need to keep doing. Now, with the last few minutes left, there's only one more thing for us to do, and that is wrapping up today's discussion. I am going to invite Nora, who has been taking care of the chat, and Anna, who you met in the beginning and highlighted some of our findings, to join me here for very brief final comments, because we've heard from the municipalities, we've heard from the UN, from Local 2030 Association, we've heard from the research perspective from the Stockholm Environment Institute, we've heard from the associations, and where do we go from here? Anna, what is the next step on our side?
Yes, so as I mentioned before, we will finalize the study in the next couple of months before the end of the year, and we'll publish a policy brief next year. So we're really also interested to hear your comments and get your feedback, but also share some invitations to the upcoming events so we could keep a track of relevant events to attend and celebrate.
Perfect. So the chat is still active. You can share those links there now, but of course, let's stay in touch also afterwards. Then Nora, you've been looking at the chat, which has been very active today. So I just want to thank you for being very active participants and sharing all of your experiences and so on. What stands out to you? What are you taking away to our work as we continue?
Yeah, I think it was very nice to see the chat and all of the things you shared. It seemed the things that we've been talking about, the importance of peer learning and talking to each other, it happened in the chat. So I hope you also found that useful. One key takeaway from me from this whole webinar is really this point that has been mentioned a couple of times, that it has taken us quite a while to understand the SDGs and to communicate the SDGs and to understand how we have to do this. And now we simply need more time to get the work done, to move, as we said, from talking to more accelerated action. And perhaps that is also the key takeaway for us. We simply need more time, not necessarily because the Agenda 2030 has been a failure, quite the contrary. It's been a very important tool. It just has taken us a while to move through this complexity, understand what we need to do, and now we simply need more time to get it done. So that to me was a key point I took away from a lot of the discussions today.
Excellent. So yes, 2030 is coming, the clock is ticking, time, some people can say, is running out, but it's not like the work stops there. So we definitely have a lot of elements to build on and to work on also after the 2030. So let's keep this work going. At this point, I just want to thank you very much for being part of today's webinar, for joining the discussion, for being very active. We've recorded this whole session, so if you missed any details, you can always go back to the recording, which will be available soon. You will also get the material in a follow-up. And if you want to stay updated on what happens next and what we do on our side, make sure to subscribe to Nordregio's newsletter so that you get the latest updates, not only from this project, but also from our other work. Right now, I just want to thank you and wish you a very nice rest of the day. Thanks a lot for being part of this webinar.